And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up right here on AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
Hey Peter, it was an exciting weekend in mixed martial arts with UFC, Bellator, and Rising all having big shows this weekend. It's going to be another busy weekend coming up.
Yeah, and we got the playoffs as well for the NHL. And Stevie, you know what's better than overtime? Double overtime. Toronto beat Washington double overtime the other night, and man, you really are a diehard fan if you're sitting through 4.5, almost 5 periods of hockey to get a winner.
I'd sit through any amount if I could actually watch Detroit, but they're not in it, and I figured that was why you were bringing it up. I'm kind of avoiding the playoffs this year because I'm a little sore about it.
Oh, well, it's the first round's always the unpredictable, sort of like March Madness, where the first round you always want to tune in because there might be an upset, and I mean, it's not like sudden death right now because it's a best of 7 series in every series, but there are certain teams up 2-1 and certain teams up there are 3 up on their opponent. You're like I love the fact with upsets in hockey. No. Oh, you'll love this story. They're down 2-0 in their series to Nashville. First 2 games were in Chicago. They haven't scored a goal yet. Who had that in their pool? Down 2-0. They haven't scored a goal yet. That's like someone getting knocked 30-26, 30-26, 30-26, and it's like they haven't scored a punch. All right, well, we got tons to talk about this week, and we've got, let's start with Bellator. They had a show, and it wasn't the best show, I guess. We'll start with that, because the main event was supposed to be a title fight.
No, Leandro Higo missed by 4 pounds, so they changed it to a 3-round non-title fight, and they pretty much fought like it was a 3-round non-title fight. They both phoned it in a little bit.
I ranted about fighters missing weight. I've ranted about fighters missing weight for title fights. But if you have a chance to fight for a championship, make weight.
Well, I did
4 pounds is not a little bit.
I did warn you that Ego had a track record because he once had to shave his head to make weight for a fight. So this guy was known to be pushing it right to the limit, right up till he stepped on the scale. And this time it backfired on him in a big time way.
Do they have a 145 weight class in Bellator?
They have every weight class other than bantamweight for women.
Maybe it should be a 145.
Well, it was his first fight in Bellator, so how would they even know?
Yeah, well, it's not like his first fighting at 135, though.
Right, which is why you would have thought he wouldn't have a problem making the weight. But, again, apparently he was just trying to push it and be as big as he could and pushed it too far.
And I agree with you, Stevie. Like, this was a phone-it-in fight. The scores were 30-27, 30-27, and yes, 28-29. For a split decision victory.
I want to know what that judge was watching.
Another fight.
Yeah, because there's maybe 1 round I could give Ego, and that was the third when it looked like Dantas was just like, screw it, I already got this in the bag. So maybe you could give Ego the 3rd round, but no way you're giving him 2 out of 3 rounds in that fight.
Now, the one that I'm trying to figure out is, in that 3rd round, Dantas did not appear like he was going for a finish.
No.
And if you're a champ and you want to defend your title, wouldn't you want to go for a finish?
Well, since it was non-title, I guess he didn't care.
So, if it was non-title, why would he give a damn and basically screw it?
That's my conclusion, but
Ugh.
I still think he outclassed Ego in this fight. I don't think you can say he fought a bad fight. He fought at the level of his opponent, which is one of your biggest criticisms is when guys don't go out to perform at the top level because they know they don't have to. And I think we saw that when he fought Galvo. He went out at the top level because he had trained with Galvo. He'd fought Galvo before he knew Galvo was good. So he went out there and gave us the best Dudu Dantas that he could possibly be. And on this occasion, it was like, nah, I don't have to work that hard.
So, my last point on this fight before we move on to the co-main event. In what other job can you not give 100% and still get paid how much?
Yeah, substantial sums of money.
It's disgusting. But anyways, Dantas wins the catchweight fight at 139 via split decision. Let's move on. Daniel Weichel against John Teixeira.
Now, here is a really interesting predicament for me.
Mm-hmm.
I correctly picked the winner of these fights, but in this one, I disagree with my own prediction, and I also disagree with the scoring. I believed that Daniel Weichel would win this fight. I believed he had momentum on his side, but Teixeira was really strongly aggressive in this fight. He actually was going out there to make a statement, and I had him winning 2 out of 3 rounds because he was the more active fighter. And once again, it was only in the 3rd round when he started to slow down a little bit that I thought Weichel actually picked it up and started really connecting with his hooks and his kicks. And I was like, okay, I can give Weichel the 3rd, but he still lost this fight. And then when he won the split decision, I was like, who scored this?
I mean,
and I'm disagreeing with myself. I picked Weichel to win, and I don't think he won, but he won.
So the problem I have with this fight is obviously the scoring. But what I want to say, and, you know, I rarely say this, but I would pay to put this fight in America in a rematch and make it put some stakes on it. Because this did not have a definitive winner.
No, and that's really terrible right now for the featherweight division because you're trying to set guys up to face the winner of Straus versus Pitbull on Friday. And this was supposed to be one of those set-up fights. You had 2 guys with really long streaks, and you wanted to break one of their streaks and put the other one ahead in title contention. And now I think you've actually just muddied the waters with both of them because Teixeira won, even though he lost, and Weichel, you know, it gets another win in his column, but it's not the way you would want to do it.
Teixeira did everything he could.
Yeah.
And I had him winning 29-28, so.
He was a very aggressive fighter. He was constantly moving forward. He was constantly landing strikes. I almost want to go back and see if we can find that old trope of, well, the fighter on defense actually landed more shots. I didn't see it. Watching this fight live, I didn't see that. I didn't see Weichel actually scoring when he was backing up. In fact, I saw Weichel get dropped at least once.
He should be the one demanding a rematch. He wants to prove that he's the better fighter.
Actually, it's kind of that situation we had with Rampage and King Mo, where Rampage won and called him out because he felt like he didn't prove his point.
Why don't you talk about the next fight here, the women's featherweight fight, because this was a bloody mess, literally.
Yeah, I guess that's one way of putting it. So, it's actually a flyweight fight, not a bantamweight fight.
Oh, sorry, featherweight.
It's Lena Ovechnikova and Helen Harper. Helen had a really nice first round. She got a takedown. She had an armbar and a triangle on at the same time. Couldn't get Ovechnikova to tap to either one of them, but not for lack of trying. She was just going out there to dump her whole gas tank in the first round and try to score the upset, which she needed to do because she's a natural strawweight. She was coming up in weight and looked at the weigh-ins. No offense. I'm not trying to demean her in any way, but I'm just saying she looked thick, you know, just, she was not fighting at her normal weight and you could tell. So she had one strategy, which was go out here fast, get a takedown, get a submission and end it. And that didn't work. And then in the second round, that turned the apple cart all upside down on her because she had no gas left, and Ovechnikova is a kickboxer and used that striking pedigree to great effect. She was throwing kicks to the body, knees to the head, elbows, fists, everything you can imagine. And poor Harper, with no gas left because she burnt it all out in the first round, just had to stand there and take a beating, and her face was bloody, and her body was bruised, and she couldn't get off the stool. And this ended by technical knockout after the end of round 2. She was a mess.
Now the doctor obviously waved the fight off, but I mean, there's no way she was going to out for the 3rd round, was there?
She couldn't stand up. They tried to get her off the stool and she couldn't do it.
That's where the doctor is doing what they're supposed to do for the protection of the fighters.
Yeah, that was a great call on the part of the physician and the referee to make sure that she didn't go back out there for round 3, because that would have been a one-sided massacre none of us needed to see.
No. And at a catch weight of 147, Adam Borish beat Anthony Taylor with a rear naked choke at 4:12 of the first round. Something that we talked about last week. In that first round, you're not as slippy, and these submissions can be really dangerous.
Right. And Anthony Taylor, as we noted on last week's show, he's more mouth than he is skill. If he was as good on his feet as he was at building up a fight, they'd really have something on their hands, but he doesn't know enough to know what he doesn't know. And what he doesn't know is how to properly defend himself when somebody jumps right on top of him and goes for a rear naked choke. He was no way getting out of this.
So, this fighter reminds me of, remember JT Money?
Yeah. From
All
Ultimate
talk.
Fighter, yeah. It was a lot of talk, and, well, I did like him, but he didn't develop as much as I'd hoped he would.
He was more the infamous Ultimate Fighter participants for, what was it, punching the window, or kicking the windows out of a limo at the casino, and...
Yeah, he had some substance problems, which probably also hindered his career.
So, he's a fighter that I go to and it's basically all talk and not enough to back it up. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened here, and that rear naked choke was in. Like, it was...
Yeah. This was like tap or die. It was that deep. He was going to turn purple if he didn't tap out.
Now we'll talk about another vicious choke later on in our UFC coverage in just a minute.
Oh yeah, Thug Rose.
But let's talk about the prelims on Spike.com. There were 2 of them, and both had a finish. Brian Moore beat Mikel Horjesi with TKO in the second round at 3:57, and Mate Cortez beat Patrick Sombat with TKO at 4:37 of the second round.
You must be reading off Wikipedia or something, because they did not air these. If they came up, it was not sent to me. I was not given a code. They were not aired. I was not even asked to worry about it.
It was on the website.
Well, no, because I was covering the fights when this show took place, and I did not see any preliminaries on the web anywhere. Again, Bellator sends me all this information. For whatever it's worth, I'm the, quote, Bellator guy at MMA Mania. So when they air prelims, they send me everything. There's like, here's the embedded code for the press conference. Here's the embedded code for the preliminary fights. Here's the embedded code for everything. You know, they send me all this shit. They didn't send me anything. So if this aired, they did it without bothering to tell anybody.
Maybe there was, the result that I got might have been someone in attendance. Who knows?
Or you're just looking at Wikipedia, cause I can see it on Wikipedia, but I'm just telling you, if they showed it, they didn't tell us. And you'd think you would tell the guys that are actually covering Bellator that there's going to be Bellator.com prelims.
Bellator.com?
Well, they air them on both Bellator.com and Spike.com.
Okay. I only thought it was on Spike's website.
No, if you go to Bellator.spike.com, it comes up.
Okay. Well, let's move on to UFC on Fox 24. Demetrius Johnson trying to tie a historic mark. If he wins here, he ties Anderson Silva for most consecutive title defenses at 10. The only man in his way was Wilson
Hayes.
And let's start at the top here. Now, I was doing double duty. I was watching the hockey game and watching the fights. I had a split screen going on, and I swear this happened at the commercial break at the finish, because DJ just busted him up and was raining elbows, and it was the blood started trickling down, and then all of a sudden, before you can snap your fingers, DJ transitioned into the armbar, and it was, man, you better tap out now, because that arm was hyperextended, and he's like, no, I'm tapping. I'm tap.
Well, this was after DJ had already beaten the crap out of him for most of the second round.
Yeah.
And it was pretty clear that Hayes was a mess before the third round began. And so DJ just started pouring on the punishment immediately. And once he had him down on the ground and was pounding the snot out of him, he's like, okay, this guy ain't defending himself. If I put on the armbar now, he's done. It's like, I actually thought that was kind of merciful on DJ's part. It's like, he could have just kept mashing this guy's face in and elbowing him in the head. He's like, no, I could punish him all day or I could finish him right now. And I thought he actually made the nice choice there for his opponent.
He didn't look like he took too much damage either.
No, DJ looked fresh after this fight.
So he'll have a quick turnaround. I don't think he'll be medically suspended for for that long, if anything. So
right. Well, he'll probably take some time off while Dana White assembles the 10 belts that he owes him.
Oh yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there in the news. Let's move on to, well, the official time was 4:49 of the third round. Now, women's strawweight action, Thug Rose against Michelle Watterson, and Thug Rose took the Karate Hotties back here and applied a rear naked choke, and you knew, like, Michelle Watterson tried fighting it, and to no avail. She had to tap out. 2:47 of the second round.
This is pretty much the exact opposite of what I said earlier about Anthony Taylor,
Mm-hmm.
where she does know what she doesn't know, and she knows defense for any kind of submission. She's high level from Invicta all the way up till now, and this was just so perfectly applied, there was no defense that she could use to get out of it.
No. And after this fight, well, during the press conference, Thug Rose wanted to basically say, I'm the next title contender, and Dana White agrees. Like, this is a fighter that should go for a title next.
I think she's in line.
No way, she's in the conversation, that's for sure. Robert Whittaker against Ronaldo Jacare Souza. Souza just signed an 8-fight contract with the UFC. Not the way he wanted to start this contract.
No, but you get to pat yourself on the back right now for calling this.
Yep. That was, I'm not sure if it was overconfidence or if it was just,
I think Whittaker was just super motivated here, and once he rocked Jacare with a shot, he was like, oh my god, I just rocked Jacare. Okay, now let's turn on the gas. It's time to go.
I think it's hard for me to say this, but do you think Whittaker motivation was the Jacare contract? Because if you beat a guy who just signed a super long contract with UFC, they might offer you something in return as well.
I think his motivation was simply, this guy has been knocking on the door of a title shot forever. Mm-hmm. All I gotta do is beat him to jump ahead in line. So he went out there with the mindset that I'm not gonna hold back. If I get this guy hurt, I'm gonna pour it on until I get the finish. And Jacare, now some people are gonna argue about the stoppage. I already suspect that you're gonna make a point about it as well, but I felt like it was entirely justified here.
No, I think the referee erred on the side of caution.
Yeah. I don't think Jacare was in any position to take any more punishment than he already had.
No. And this should be a running segment on this show. Shit Michael Bisping says.
Well, he's been doing it for 10 years and change now?
Well, let's see. His quote on Jacare's loss: talk shit, get banged.
That kind of says it all.
Yeah. There's nothing more that needs to be said there. It's, you talk crap, this is what happens, basically. Let's move on to Renato Moicano against Jeremy Little Heathen Stevens, and this went to the judges.
Do you agree?
No.
You don't think that Moicano won this fight?
No, I had it 29-28 Stevens.
I watched it. I could have gone either way with it. There's at least one round that I thought was a toss-up.
Yeah, same. I think it's a fight where these guys fight 10 times, you're going to have 5-5 or 6-4.
Well, I think the real problem for Jeremy is not that he didn't fight a good fight here. It's just, what is Little Heathen known for? He's known for just dropping bulls in their tracks with one great shot. And if he had done that, there wouldn't be any question about it. But when he goes to a decision and he's been in a war with people, that's a problem because sometimes in those wars, you're given as many shots as you're taking. You're 50-50 on that, and you're leaving it up to a judge to decide whose was more effective, and they couldn't agree in this case.
And we'll talk about another fighter who relies on one-punch power in just a second, but split decision, 2-1 for 2 of the 3 judges gives the victory to Moicano, and
biggest victory of Renato Moicano's career, no question.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he knocks off a ranked featherweight.
Yeah, he should be knocking on the door easily, and I am very curious to see who they put in his way next, because that featherweight division, still one of the most exciting divisions in the UFC.
I'd argue the Bellator one might even be a little bit better, but yeah, it's a really good division.
Now the prelims on Fox, the main event saw Alexander Volkov against Roy Nelson.
Is this where you're going to talk about the one punch? Because Nelson never landed that one punch, and he was looking for it the whole time.
He's got to rely on more than just the one punch power because, I mean, the rest of the division's catching up really fast. In fact, he's going to be lapped by that division soon, too.
Well, and he's 40, and he's a man, and he's 40, but still, it's not a good time to be 40 years old in the heavyweight division.
I love the old college football press conference drops there.
Right. Well, Volkov did exactly what he needed to do. He stayed long. He stayed at distance. He threw kicks. He threw jabs. He never let Roy close the distance and clobber him.
So he had a game plan. He executed it. It was perfect.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I'd say about Tom Duquesnoy, too. He executed a very perfect game plan in his fight.
He beat Patrick Williams with a TKO elbow and punch combo at 28-second mark of the second round.
Pretty much stamped that I'm a phenom thing that people have been talking about with him for a while now. In fact, I remember hearing John Pollock complain that this guy should have been on the main card, and he turned in a performance that looked worthy of being on a main card.
Absolutely. We've seen fighters on the main card that have no business being on the main card.
Right. Whereas Duquesnoy, I'm learning how to say that name now that I've heard it several times from Pollock and on the broadcast. That was just a sensational finish. It just, Patrick Williams, I'm not saying he was a bad fighter. In fact, he's a pretty good fighter, but he just got blown out here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just go back to the drawing board, see what worked and what didn't, and go from there. You really can't hang your head if you get caught with a TKO in less than 30 seconds of a round.
Right.
You get clipped. It happens.
Mm-hmm.
Rashid Magomedov beat Bobby Green in the split decision, 2-1 here.
You're gonna have to fill me in on this one. I missed it.
I caught bits and pieces of it, because as I said, I was watching double duty there, but, yeah, I mean, I like Magomedov in this fight winning. I have no problem with the decision. The problem I have now is Magomedov is now a free agent.
Yeah, that's gonna make for interesting contract negotiations, although I suspect they wouldn't want him to go to Bellator. I think they'll make him a pretty good offer.
Park that Brinks truck outside his gym. That's all you need to do. Because, Bellator will try to, if not, put a significant, higher offer financially in front of him if he wants to jump ship to Bellator.
Well, I've heard some interesting things regarding Bellator matching or exceeding UFC offers, but I would just go ahead and recommend that you go listen to the MMA show on the law, and they'll give you an even better breakdown than we can in the limited time that we have here.
And wrapping up the prelims on Fox, there was Tim Elliott against Louis Smolka. One-sided butt kicking. You expect anything else from Elliott?
No, not really. He's a stud.
No. And as far as the Fight Pass prelims, there was a few things I want to talk about here. Aljamain Sterling beat Augusto Mendez with unanimous decision 2-1. And let's see, Devin Clark, same thing. Devin Clark beat Jake Collier, unanimous decision 30-27, 30-27, 30-26. Anthony Smith beat Andrew Sanchez with a knockout late in the third round at 3:52. Zach Cummings beat Nathan Coy. This fight, this is one that I circled on my notes here because Cummings won with a technical submission. He had him locked in a guillotine choke. Technical submission means Coy didn't tap out.
Yeah, Coy is really well known for being tough as nails, so he's not a guy that's gonna quit even when he probably should.
Well, he passed out, and some people are saying that the choke was on a little too long. That's why the referee is there. If it's on there and the guy taps out, you get that fighter to get him to release it. But
and
if that choke is in there deep,
it was Koi's own choice not to tap out to it. So he's got responsibility for it if anybody's upset about it, because he could have tapped and he didn't.
Yep. And Caitlin Vieira beat Ashley Evans Smith, unanimous decision, 30-27, 29-28, and 29-28.
A little bit of an upset there, actually. That'll move Caitlin Vieira into the bantamweight rankings.
And Evans Smith?
Puts her at or near the bottom of the rankings if she hangs on.
If she hangs on, that's true. Now, we talked about Sterling winning his fight by unanimous decision. Yeah. And at the press conference,
Augusto Mendez, who is no slouch. In fact, I just talked to a guy that was previously scheduled with him, and he was raving about how good that Augusto is, like how tough of a fighter he is, and how good of a fight Augusto Mendez was for Cody Garbrandt. So it's not like he beat a scrub here; he beat a tough guy.
Now, Sterling said, I'm just going to paraphrase some of the quotes he had here, but actually I'm going to read it verbatim for some of them. People may say, oh, he's a whiner, he's a complainer. No, man, I just want you guys to give me 100% like I'm trying to give you 100%. I'm here busting my ass for you to come off the couch and just go and start judging a fight with no real experience. I just think that's the kind of a slap in the face what we do for a living. People can say that's disrespectful. I don't give a bleep. If you don't know what the hell the marks are, why are you a judge? Now I got to adapt my style because you're not smart enough to comprehend what's actually taking place in the octagon.
Check your connection, Peter. You were kind of breaking up a little bit there.
Can you repeat that then?
Yeah, repeat that.
Okay. So I'll start with this quote then. People may say, oh, he's a whiner, he's a complainer. No, man, I just want you guys to give me 100% like I'm trying to give you 100%. I'm in here busting my ass for you to come off the couch and just go and start judging a fight with no real experience. I just think that's the kind of a slap in the face what we do for a living. People can say that's disrespectful. I don't give a bleep. If you don't know what the hell the martial arts are, why are you a judge? Now I've got to adapt my style because you're not smart enough to comprehend what's actually taking place in the octagon.
Wow.
Did he just call out the judges?
It did kind of come across that way. He basically implied that they are at or below the level of fans who actually watch fights because they just got off their couch and sat down at cage side and tried to score a fight without knowing what they were watching.
I mean, we've seen certain fighters and a certain promoter question judges' scores from time to time, but nothing to this level where if you're not smart enough to comprehend, that's a shot across the bow there.
You know, there are a few judges, look at that Bellator card we just talked about, where I might say he has a point, because what the hell were they watching? Why did they score it that way? Who the fuck knows?
Oh, man. All right, so we'll talk the Ryzen show, then we'll talk some news in just a second here. But let's talk about what happened at Ryzen Fighting Federation 5. There are some name fighters in this card here. Tatsui Kawajiri beating Anthony Burchak with a unanimous decision.
Yep.
Let's see, what other names are out there? Koji Horiguchi beat Yuki Motoya, another unanimous decision.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that Horiguchi went from being top ranked at UFC to being on a Ryzen card. So obviously they made him a good money offer.
Absolutely. Satoshi Ishii beat Heath Herring, another unanimous decision.
Why is Heath Herring still fighting? Honest question.
Why is Jens Pulver still fighting?
Okay, I guess you just answered mine with a question, so I can't even try to take it back from that. You win.
A name that we talked about off air, Stevie, Yusuke Yachi beat Darren Cruikshank, knocked him out at the 5-minute, 10-second mark of the very first round.
Yeah, that's a shame, because I like the Detroit Superstar, so I always want to see him do well in Rising, because he's kind of made a home for himself there, but didn't pan out this time.
And the one here that caught my eye is from the Atomweight division. Sayori Ishioka beat Bisare Kija, submission in the first round at 212. All
right.
That's a fight that that's a fight that I really like that that's a huge victory for her, and I think she'll move on for Ryzen's atomweight division. But let's talk the news here before we talk about what's happening this week. Mauro Ranallo has returned to MMA. He joined Frank Shamrock for that aforementioned Ryzen show.
That is correct.
And I think we talked about this last week as well, Stevie, but Marlon Moraes signed with UFC.
Yep. I expected that all along, and I believe they already announced his first fight.
Mm-hmm. He's fighting Rafael Assunção at UFC 212 in Rio de Janeiro in June.
I retweeted whoever was the first I saw to break that news, and I said, I love that because Marlon Moraes is a very class guy. He works with a great team. He spars with Frankie Edgar and all those guys, and he's going to do very well in UFC, and this is the kind of test he needs to prove it.
Eduardo Dantas, with his victory at the Bellator show this past weekend, that's his 10th Bellator win. He's only the 13th fighter to have 10 wins in Bellator.
Yeah, I really don't want to take anything away from Dantas because he is a stellar fighter. It's just a shame that the fight turned out the way it did because his opponent missed weight and they both just kind of threw in the towel after that. But you can't look at his record and say he's not a spectacular fighter or that he isn't a winning fighter in Bellator, one of their most decorated fighters.
Now, speaking of decorated, Stevie, it's a good segue to Demetrius Johnson. He wants some belts.
Right. I alluded to this earlier. Basically, he was complaining about the fact that every time a champion defends the title successfully in another weight class, Dana White presents them with a brand new belt and puts it around their waist. And he said, I want a belt for every single time I defended the title. And Dana White's answer to that was, well, it doesn't really work that way. You win a belt, you defend a belt, you keep that belt. But we have given belts to other people in other situations, so we'll do it for him here, but it's going to take a while to get that many belts made, so give us some time.
If you look at Andre Ward or Floyd Money Mayweather, they have pictures on their Instagram where it's like all their belts laid up on a table. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what DJ wants. He wants a photo with all the belts for every defense that he has. And I mean, Mayweather and Ward, that's some impressive gold, but every time I hear this story, it reminds me of the Ultimo Dragon. When he had like 10 belts at once and he had his arms extended and he was wearing all the belts at once. That's what this reminds me of.
Mm-hmm. And he could do that. DJ has made that many defenses now. He's tied with Anderson Silva, so he does deserve some props and accolades and recognition.
All right, so let's talk about Bellator 178 this weekend. And Stevie, I know how much you love rematches, but this is a round number 4 situation here.
That's right. 4th time.
Daniel Straus against Patricio Pitbull Freire, and I mean, does Straus tie the series at 2 here?
It's funny you should mention that.
Oh?
Well, that was something that I talked to Daniel Straus about, and you may be hearing or reading that interview the same day this podcast goes up. I had a nice 15-minute long chat with the champ, and I posed that question to him. I said, does it matter to you that this is going to tie the series 2-all if you win? And his response was, in my mind, I'm actually ahead of him because I won the second fight until he got lucky and choked me out. It just took till the third fight for me to actually get my hand raised. So for me, this is actually 3 in a row. That's his
like
mentality. You cannot argue with the confidence of a champion. If that's what he believes, then it serves his mental health to go into a fight thinking that he's already dominant and he's going to continue to dominate. That's the champion mentality.
It's like that new math you keep hearing about.
Well, yeah. He does admit that the first time they fought, there was no question that he got beaten by Pitbull in their very first encounter. Mm-hmm. But after that, he says, all bets are off, because if you look at the second fight, I was beating the hell out of him, and then he choked me out. And in the third fight, I beat the hell out of him until I broke my hand, and I won.
So I'm thinking Straus wins this fight, and then by that decision, we're going to have one more fight. It's going to be like the final encounter, the fifth of a best of 5 series. They're tied at 2 according to the judges, or according to the record book, I should say. But I think Straus wins this one, and it sets up one last fight between these two fighters. I don't think this will be the last time these two fighters match up against each other.
Maybe not, but you need to wait a good long while after this fight. If Straus retains successfully, it's time to move other people into the picture. And I asked Straus about that too. And he said, you know, these guys are hungry. I'm going to keep them fed. Keep them all coming. I'll defend the title. I'll take on anybody they send to me.
He doesn't lack in confidence, does he?
No, I enjoy talking to, not only do I enjoy talking to a champion, but I enjoy talking to a confident champion. I like a little bit of swagger in a champion. I think it's a good quality.
Do you prefer an interview like that with a confident champion, or do you prefer someone who has way too much confidence, like, oh, I don't know, Chael P. Sonnen?
Well, there's a difference between confidence and bluster. Confidence is when you know what you can do and you go out there and do it, and you train hard enough to know what you can do. And then there's just straight up bluster, where you say a lot of things, you get a lot of attention, people tune in, and sometimes you deliver and sometimes you don't. That's Chael Sonnen.
Well, let's transition to the co-main event here it's a women's flyweight fight, Stevie. Floor is yours, because I know who I'm picking, but I'm curious to see who you pick in this one.
All right. Well, we've got Ilima-Lei Macfarlane and Jessica Middleton in what I believe is the co-main event of this show. It depends on how it actually lines up when they actually do the broadcast, but in my mind it's the co-main event because they're both undefeated. There's no champion right now in this division.
No.
And they would really like to establish who is next in line for when they have an inaugural flyweight title match. And in my mind, that's got to be Ilima-Lei, because not only is she a star in terms of her personality and her look, the way she finishes fights when she gets on submissions. We were talking about how vicious Thug Rose was, how perfectly applied that one was when she got the submission on Michelle Watterson. To hear Ilima-Lei tell it, her rear naked choke when she finished Rebecca Ruth actually wasn't perfect because she had to put it on more than once. And my response to that was, well, you might have had to put it on more than once, but when you got it on, she turned purple. That fight was over. I think Ilima-Lei and her 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu is some of the best we'll see of any woman in the sport. Right up there with Thug Rose.
I'm going to be devil's advocate, and I'm going to pick Middleton.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can understand why you're going to say that, because it's not like Jessica Middleton has been going out there and having bad fights. I mean, she is undefeated, but I just feel like, again, the whole 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu thing, I feel like her skill level in grappling is probably going to be at or above the level of Middleton. And even though Middleton had a very exciting back and forth fight with Alice Yager and a good fight with Bruna Ellen, who was not a slouch in submissions herself, I just feel like Ilima-Lei is fighting at a higher level right now.
Who was the fighter you were talking about? Was it last week about the rear naked choke and how they were modifying it with the wrist control?
That's Ilima-Lei.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so impressed with her. It's like she takes a very scientific approach to her jiu-jitsu and really thinks about the best way to do it and to properly apply it. And I'm not trying to knock Middleton that much, but I'm just thinking right now, I don't see her being on the level of Ilima-Lei. I feel like Ilima-Lei is a star, and Middleton would be getting a huge upset and knocking a little bit of luster off that star if she goes out here and gets the win.
Now, as far as this fight is concerned, two things. One, if you're a casual fan and listening to this podcast, thank you. And also, watch this fight.
Right.
This would be a hell of a fight to watch if you're a casual fan.
If you have any doubts, like I just said earlier, go back and watch the fight of Ilima-Lei and Rebecca Ruth and see the finish of that fight. and she has a really funny quote about what she was doing at the end of that fight, and I don't want to spoil that for you. So go to MMA Mania, read my interview, and she had absolutely hilarious comments because she compared herself to somebody that we all know very well.
Now, Ryan Quinn is fighting Saad Awad, but this fight's a catchweight at 165?
Yeah, that actually was revealed to me during the interview with Saad Awad. He said, I don't know if anybody has told you yet or if they've made it official, but we're actually fighting at a catchweight. And he told me that because I asked him if he was going to go back down to lightweight or stay at welterweight because he had just fought Brennan Ward at welterweight. And he's like, no, after this fight, I'm going back down to 155. I want to prove myself there. I want to get a title shot. I've never had a title shot in Bellator. So this is a catchweight for now, but I'm definitely going back to lightweight.
Well, is Awad the favorite in your opinion?
I think it's almost a coin flip.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying that because of the fact that Awad is a great fighter. He definitely has knockout power. But I think Ryan Quinn is a little bit slept on because he's actually undefeated in Bellator's lightweight division. I know that seems odd when you look at his record on paper and it's like 13-6-1, but he's won all 7 of his Bellator fights. So the thing is, you just don't know what Ryan Quinn you're going to get.
So I've used this term before, and I want to get your opinion on it, but what about the term Bellator resurgence? Is that a thing now?
I think you could coin that term. I don't know if I concur
I mean,
with
look at Phil Davis. He went to Bellator, and he reinvented himself. You've got a fighter like Quinn. He had a so-so record. He's undefeated in Bellator. Do certain fighters, once they get to Bellator, are able to not find themselves, but they have like a resurgence, a Bellator resurgence, if you will.
All right.
I just find it's some fighters are, how do I say this? Like, I'll use Phil Davis as an example. Like, he was up there, top of the top, but he goes to Bellator and it's almost like instead of being a medium fish in a big pond, he's the big fish in the small pond. But Bellator is not exactly a small pond. It's just he is finding the tools in his career, at his stage of his career, that makes him that much more of a dangerous fighter.
I agree.
All right, let's move on to the last fight on the main card, AJ McKee against Dominic Mazzotta.
All right.
I got McKee winning this one. I don't know about you.
Yeah, McKee all day.
And twice on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this last show here, we got a lot of shows this week and we're at the finish line here. UFC Fight Night 108. Main event is Cub Swanson against Artem Lobov. CV, is there a reason this show is a Fight Pass and not a pay-per-view?
Yeah, because Artem Lobov is just barely over 500 as a fighter.
And Cub Swanson's a great fighter, but if you put him in the main event, it's not a pay-per-view fight.
Well, if you put him in a title fight, it is.
Yeah, but this is not a title fight. This is a fight where Swanson is set up to win here to make the case that he's in the conversation for featherweight title shot. But this, I don't know, something, we talked about the UFC on Fox show last week. The ratings came in. It was the worst they've ever had. I'm not expecting a miracle, rating for this show. The casual fans do not care about Cub Swanson and Artem Lobov.
No.
You need to put, if you're going to put, remember, was it last year or was it 2 years ago when they actually thought, with Fight Night cards, you want to have a decent fight on here. You want to, get the casual fans even for these Fight Night shows. Like hell, the Fight Night here in Ottawa had Rory McDonald and Wonderboy Thompson.
True.
So why not have a decent fight? This card is lacking star power for the main card. For the main event, sorry, because there are some decent fights on the main card as well.
Mm-hmm.
But who do you got, Swanson or Lobov?
Oh, Swanson all day.
Not even considering Lobov.
Lobov's biggest thing that he has going for him is that he trains with Conor McGregor, and he's tougher than a $2 steak. Since you're throwing out the pro wrestling references, I'll throw one out as well.
I haven't heard that one in a while, actually.
Yeah, so it's not like he can't go out there and get in a war with somebody at or around the same level that he is and probably pull out a decision on points, but to beat Cub Swanson, I mean, come on, give me a fucking break.
Yeah. Ally Quinta fights Diego Sanchez.
Yeah, well, that actually is a little bit more intriguing of a fight to me than Cub Swanson massacring Artem Lobov, because Diego, talk about your resurgence. That's a guy that keeps reinventing himself and finding ways to win, even when we don't think he should still be fighting anymore. So I'm intrigued whether Iaquinta can get over the hump with Diego, or if Diego pulls another trick out of his hat.
Well, I like Quinta. We saw him in Ultimate Fighter. Diego is former champion of Ultimate Fighter. So, man, I'm going to go Sanchez. I'm not as confident as I have been for other picks on this show. Like, I can see Iaquinta winning, but I'm going Sanchez.
Yeah, I think it is kind of a toss-up.
OSP fights Marcos Rodrigo de Lima at a light heavyweight class, or light heavyweight fight. OSP winning this fight. I don't see de Lima winning this one.
Well, OSP got upset the last time out.
Yeah, so he's pissed off. Pissed off OSP. I don't want to fight him.
I wouldn't either.
This one here, the next fight, I'm really intrigued by is John Dodson and Eddie Wineland.
Yeah, that's a hell of a fight.
That's a fight that I don't know what the odds are, but this is a fight that will definitely change by the weigh-ins. I want Dodson to win. I like him as a fighter, but man, how do I pick against Eddie Wineland? Yeah, I'm gonna go Wineland in this one.
I will as well.
It's hard because I really like Dodson though. Dawson's got the tools here to win this fight, but jeez, it's hard to pick against Wineland. That's what I'm gonna say about that. Now, what about Stevie Ray and Joe Lozon?
Joe?
Yeah?
I don't know.
I think Stevie Ray might upset the apple cart here and beat him. I think Stevie Ray could beat Lozon. Lozon, I think he's a name fighter, and Stevie Ray's going to use that as motivation to advance his ranking here.
You might be right.
Now, what about Jake Ellenberger and Mike Perry?
I'll go with Ellenberger.
That was a surprise. Mike Perry, does he have a chance here, or is this an Ellenberger basically showcase fight here?
Well, you talked about being pissed off after a loss, after losing that fight because his foot got stuck in the freaking cage. I think Ellenberger's going to be more than pissed off at this.
I tried to block that from my memory. That was not good. That was unfortunate.
Yeah. Like,
how many times do you ever see that in UFC?
That's like the case definition of a fluke. Freak occurrence.
We had a guest on our show years ago, if you can check the archives, but they went into the cage and they didn't put the bolt there and they fell through. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's something you don't see now. That's a fluke. That getting an appendage caught in the cage as you're no, just no. Prelims on Fox Sports 2. Tally's Ladies against Sam Alvey. That should be a good one. Now, what about Jessica Penne and Danielle Taylor?
I would go with Penny there.
She needs a win here.
She does. I think she'll get it.
Dustin Ortiz and Brandon Marino and Scott Holtzman and Michael McBride wrap up the prelims on FS2. And on the Fight Pass, Alexis Davis against Cindy Dandois. Why is Davis on the Fight Pass prelims? Is this because they want a named fighter for the Fight Pass?
It has to be.
There's no reason otherwise. Brian Barberina and Joe Proctor and Hector Sandoval and Matt Schnell wrap up the prelims on Fight Pass. I'm curious for the Proctor-Barberina fight. I'm not sure who's winning that one. Like, that's a coin flip for me. What do you think, Stevie? Do you think Barberina-Proctor is a coin flip, or do you have a winner in mind here?
I'll go with Barberina.
Yeah? Okay. All right. Well, that's all the shows that have taken place this week and are taking place. Let me try it again. That's basically the show this week. Stevie, what's on tap for Thursday Night AMP?
Just the latest on wrestling in New Japan and WWE.
So I'm sure you'll talk about Shibata, Akibono, and everything happening on Raw and SmackDown.
That's right.
No, we could talk about Akibono because